At my own graduation dinner, in front of relatives and business partners, my parents leaned across the table and told me to surrender my entire $28 million inheritance to my sister. My name is Taylor, and I didn't know it yet, but this dinner was about to cost me everything, not because she deserved it, but because she owed debts I hadn't created. When I refused, my father lifted the signed job contract I had placed on the table, my escape route to London, flicked open his gold cigar lighter, and whispered, "You aren't going anywhere. You owe this family." The paper curled into black ash while everyone stared. But I didn't cry. I didn't beg. I simply smiled, stood up, and walked away. Because the real reason I stayed calm that night wasn't something they could burn. And they had no idea what was waiting for them the following week in a lawyer's office in downtown Chicago. Before I tell you what happened in that lawyer's office, drop a comment, where are you listening from, and what time is it for you right now? I want to see who is awake with me. The Spire was one of those restaurants designed to make you feel small. It sat on the 95th floor, a glass box suspended over the grid of Chicago, filled with the smell of truffle oil and expensive desperation. The air conditioning was always set too cold, probably to encourage people to buy more wine. I sat with my hands folded in my lap, watching the last embers of my future turn into gray dust on the white tablecloth. The contract had been my ticket out. A senior architect position at a firm in London. I had spent 6 months interviewing in secret, 3 months negotiating the terms, and 5 years dreaming of the moment I would sign it. Now, it was just ash smearing the linen. My father, Gregory, snapped the lighter shut. The sound was like a rivet gun firing in the hushed dining room. He looked at me with the same expression he used when inspecting a foundation crack, clinical, disappointed, and entirely convinced of his own authority. "Don't look at me like that, Taylor," he said, his voice low enough not to disturb the neighboring tables but loud enough to cut through me. "You think you can just leave? After everything we've invested in you? This family is a structure. You don't remove a load-bearing wall just because it wants a view." My mother, Catherine, didn't look at the ash. She was busy signaling the waiter for another bottle of Pinot Noir, her face arranged in a mask of long-suffering elegance. Next to her sat Olivia, my older sister. Olivia was 30, beautiful in a way that required constant maintenance, and currently drowning in $2 million of debt from her third failed lifestyle brand. She was picking at her salad, looking bored, as if we were discussing the weather and not the cannibalization of my life. "It's just money, Taylor," Olivia said, waving a fork. "Grandpa left way too much to you anyway. You don't even like spending it. I have vendors calling me. Do you want me to go to jail?" "You won't go to jail," Gregory said, his eyes still locked on mine. "Because Taylor is going to do the right thing. She's going to sign the transfer of the trust fund tomorrow morning. And she's going to stay here in Chicago and fix the mess at the firm. Aren't you, Taylor?" The question hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. A normal person would have screamed. A normal person would have flipped the table, thrown the wine, or at least cried. I felt the urge rise in my throat, hot and sharp. I wanted to list every structural defect in our family foundation, every crack they painted over with money, every blueprint of mine they took credit for. But then, I remembered Grandpa Arthur. I remembered what he taught me about stone. Stone doesn't argue with the wind. It doesn't scream at the rain. It just endures, cold and unmoving, until the storm wears itself out. Psychologists call it the gray rock method. You become a psychological stone. You become inert material. Unyielding. Non-reactive. If I screamed, they would call me hysterical. If I cried, they would call me weak. If I argued, they would think they could negotiate. So I did none of those things. I picked up my water glass and took a slow, deliberate sip. The ice clinked softly against the crystal. I set it down. I looked at the ash on the table, then up at my father. My face became a blank wall, reinforced concrete against their hysteria. "Is that all?" I asked. My voice was flat, a monotone hum. Gregory blinked. He had expected a fight. He had prepared for a tantrum. He didn't know what to do with a vacuum. Is that all? He repeated, his face reddening. I just burned your future, Taylor. Did you not see that? I saw, I said. I checked my watch. It's late. I have a meeting in the morning. I stood up. I smoothed the napkin on the table, careful not to touch the ash. I picked up my purse. Sit down, Gregory hissed. No, I said. I didn't shout it. I just said it like I was stating the time. I turned and walked away. I felt their eyes boring into my back. I heard my mother gasp, heard Olivia whisper, "Is she serious?" But my pace didn't falter. I walked out of the glass box, into the elevator, and down 95 floors. By the time I hit the street, the cold Chicago wind hit my face, and I finally exhaled. They thought they had burned my escape. They didn't know that the contract they burned was just a copy. The original was already scanned, signed, and sitting on a server in London. And they didn't know that by burning it, they had just activated the trapdoor I had spent 5 years building. I drove home in silence. The city lights blurred past my windows, streaks of gold and red against the black asphalt. I didn't turn on the radio. I needed the quiet to reassemble the pieces of history that had led to this moment. You have to understand, I wasn't born into a family. I was born into a firm. The Sterling Architecture Group wasn't just a business, it was a religion, and my grandfather, Arthur Sterling, was its god. He built half the skyline I was driving through. He was a man of steel and concrete, hard edges and exact measurements. My father, Gregory, inherited the name but not the talent. He was a salesman, good at handshakes and golf dinners, terrible at structural loads. My mother, Catherine, was the PR department, obsessed with the optics of success rather than the mechanics of it. And then there was Olivia. Olivia was the show pony. From the time we were kids, she was the one they put in the brochures. She was loud, charismatic, and chaotic. She broke things, and my parents laughed and called it a spirit. I was the one who came behind her with the glue. I remember being 12 years old, sitting in Grandpa Arthur's study while a party raged downstairs. I was studying a set of blueprints for a new library. Grandpa walked in, smelling of pipe tobacco and old paper. He sat down opposite me and watched me trace the load-bearing walls. "You see it, don't you?" he asked. "See what?" "The structure," he said. "Most people just see the paint, Taylor. They see the facade. You see the bones." He tapped the paper. "Your sister, she's the paint. Bright. Pretty. Peels after a few years. Your father is the scaffolding, temporary. But you." He looked me right in the eye. "You are the foundation. And the problem with being the foundation, Taylor, is that everyone walks on you, and nobody sees you until the building starts to crack." He was right. For my entire 20s, I had been the invisible support beam. When Olivia got a DUI at 22, I was the one who drove to the station because Mom couldn't handle the stress. When Dad overpromised a deadline to a client, I was the one who pulled 3 all-nighters to redraw the plans so the building wouldn't collapse. I spent 5 years fixing their mistakes. I paid off Olivia's credit cards twice, under the guise of loans that were never repaid. I managed the firm's back end when Dad fired the accountant in a fit of rage. I did it because I thought that was love. I thought love was utility. I thought if I made myself useful enough, they would finally see me. But they didn't see me. They only saw the service I provided. The realization hit me 3 months ago. I had just finished saving the firm from a lawsuit caused by Olivia's negligence. She had used copyrighted designs for her clothing line. I had negotiated the settlement, paid the lawyer from my own savings, and kept it out of the press. That night, at a family dinner, my father raised a glass. To Olivia, he said, beaming. For being brave enough to take risks. A true visionary. Nobody mentioned that I had just spent $40,000 to keep that visionary out of court. I looked at them, clapping and smiling, and I realized Grandpa was right. I wasn't a daughter to them. I was a utility bill. I was a line item in their budget, necessary, boring, and expected to be paid. Grandpa Arthur died last year. He left the firm to Dad, but he left the bulk of the liquid assets, the Sterling Trust, worth $28 million, split between Olivia and me. But there were conditions. Conditions Dad hadn't bothered to read carefully because he assumed I would always do what I was told. Grandpa warned me this day would come. 2 days before he died, he pulled me close, his grip surprisingly strong. "They will try to eat you alive, Tay," he whispered. "They are hungry ghosts. They will want what you have because they cannot build anything of their own. Don't let them. I have left you a key. When they corner you, turn it." Tonight, at the Spire, they had cornered me. They demanded I liquidate my half of the trust to fill the black hole of Olivia's debt. They thought burning my contract was a power move. They thought they had trapped me in the building. They forgot that I was the one who knew where the exits were. I pulled into the parking garage of my apartment building. I turned off the engine. The silence pressed against my ears. I didn't go upstairs immediately. I opened the glove compartment and took out a small, steel drafting ruler Grandpa had given me. It was heavy, cold, and precise. I wasn't going to fix this for them. Not this time. This time, I was going to let the roof cave in. The week following the dinner was a masterclass in noise. My family didn't know how to communicate, they only knew how to broadcast. It started with the digital siege. By Tuesday morning, Olivia had launched a campaign. She posted a video on her Instagram stories, teary-eyed, wearing a designer hoodie that probably cost more than my rent. The caption read, "When family abandons you at your lowest point. #betrayal #sisterhood is dead." She didn't name me, but she didn't have to. Her followers, a swarm of 20-something aspiring influencers, filled the comments with vitriol. They called me selfish. They called me jealous. They didn't know I was the one who had funded the very apartment Olivia was filming in. Then came the financial attack. On Wednesday, I tried to log into the firm's project management server to download my portfolio files. Access denied. My father had locked me out. He sent a text message 30 seconds later, "Access returns when loyalty returns. Come to the office. Sign the papers." He thought this would panic me. He thought I needed the firm's servers to work. He didn't realize I had backed up every single drawing, every email, and every financial record to an external hard drive 3 weeks ago. I was an architect, I planned for structural failure. Then came the emotional barrage. My mother, Catherine, was the sniper. She didn't scream like Dad or post like Olivia. She left voicemails. Long, wandering voicemails that shifted from guilt to threat in the same breath. "Taylor, honey, I don't know why you're doing this. We're a family. Families share burdens. Your sister is fragile right now. Do you want her blood on your hands? If you don't help us, we'll lose the summer house. Is that what you want? To see your parents homeless?" I sat in my apartment, surrounded by boxes. The place was almost empty. I had sold the furniture. I had donated the clothes. My life was packed into 6 suitcases lined up by the door. The contrast was jarring. Outside my phone, my apartment was dead silent. Inside my phone, it was a cacophony of screaming, crying, and demanding. It was like holding a grenade that hadn't quite detonated yet. I didn't answer a single text. I didn't return a single call. I continued to gray rock them from a distance. Every time my phone buzzed, I simply glanced at it, noted the escalation, and went back to my checklist. Flight to London, confirmed. Visa, approved. Bank accounts, transferred to a new holding bank they couldn't touch. The lawyer meeting, scheduled for Friday at 9 in the morning. Thursday night, the night before the meeting, Kenneth, my father's fixer and attorney, sent me a formal email. It was a draft of the trust transfer agreement. It was draconian. It not only transferred my $14 million to Olivia to cover her debts, but it also assigned my future dividends from the firm to family maintenance costs for the next 10 years. It wasn't a request for help. It was an indenture contract. They wanted to own me. I read it while eating takeout on the floor of my empty living room. I didn't feel angry anymore. I felt a cold, sharp clarity. They weren't just bad parents. They were parasites. And parasites don't stop feeding until the host is dead. I closed the laptop. I slept on an air mattress that night. I slept soundly. Because tomorrow, I wasn't going to be the host anymore. Tomorrow, I was going to be the exterminator. The conference room at Thorne & Associates was impressive, designed to intimidate. Polished mahogany table, leather chairs that cost more than a Honda, and a view of the Chicago River that screamed old money. I arrived at 8:55. Elias Thorne, Grandpa's executor, was already there. Elias was 70, sharp as a tack, and hated my father with a passion he barely bothered to hide. He greeted me with a nod. "They're coming," he said. "Are you ready?" "I've been ready for 5 years," I said. At 9 o'clock exactly, the door burst open. My family didn't walk in, they invaded. Gregory led the charge, looking flushed and aggressive in a suit that was slightly too tight. Catherine followed, wearing oversized sunglasses indoors, radiating tragic glamour. Olivia trailed behind, scrolling on her phone, looking bored but anxious. They sat on the opposite side of the table. The divide was physical and metaphorical. "Let's make this quick," Gregory said, throwing a pen onto the table. "Taylor has come to her senses. We have the transfer papers right here. She signs, we unlock her server access, and we all go to lunch." He looked at me, expecting submission. He saw the quiet daughter, the one who fixed things. He didn't see the wall. "I'm not signing," I said. The room went deadly silent. Olivia looked up from her phone. Catherine lowered her sunglasses. "Excuse me?" Gregory said, his voice dropping an octave. "I'm not signing the transfer," I repeated. "I'm not liquidating my trust. I'm not paying Olivia's debts." "You have to," Catherine said, her voice trembling with that weaponized fragility. "It's for the family, Taylor. Olivia, she's creative. She takes risks. Sometimes risks don't pay off. That's just bad luck. But you have so much. You have the stability. You have the talent. It's your duty to share it. It's simply math." I looked at her, and suddenly, I understood everything. I understood the narcissist's mathematics. In their minds, Olivia's failures weren't mistakes, they were misfortunes, cosmic accidents that happened to her because she was special. Therefore, the cost wasn't hers to bear. But my success? My savings? My discipline? That wasn't mine. That belonged to the collective. In their twisted equation, my hard work was a resource pool they were entitled to tap whenever the golden child ran dry. They genuinely couldn't calculate their own hypocrisy because they viewed me not as a person, but as an asset. You don't ask a savings account for permission to withdraw, you just take. "It's not math, Mom," I said softly. "It's theft." "How dare you?" Gregory slammed his hand on the mahogany. "After everything I've done for you? I gave you a career. I gave you a name. You are nothing without this family. You are a selfish, ungrateful little." "Mr. Sterling," Elias interrupted. His voice was like dry ice. "I think it's time we watched the video." "What video?" Olivia asked, frowning. "The video Arthur recorded 3 days before he died," Elias said. "He left specific instructions that it was only to be played in the event that Taylor was coerced into altering the trust." Gregory froze. The color drained from his face. "Dad made a video?" "Sit down," Elias commanded. He pressed a button on the console. A large screen descended from the ceiling. The lights dimmed. And there, projected in high definition, was Grandpa Arthur. He looked frail, sitting in his leather armchair, but his eyes were blazing. "Hello, Gregory," Grandpa's voice filled the room. "If you are watching this, it means you have done exactly what I predicted. You have tried to force Taylor to pay for your mistakes." My father made a sound like a strangled animal. Catherine grabbed his arm. Olivia finally put down her phone. "I knew you would," Grandpa continued on the screen. "You always were weak, Gregory. You and Catherine, you feast on the strong to feed the weak. You have tried to break Taylor to fix Olivia. But Taylor is not yours to break. She is the only one of you who is actually a Sterling." The room was so quiet you could hear the hum of the projector. "I have added a clause to the trust," Grandpa said, leaning into the camera. "I call it the structural failure clause. If Taylor is pressured, threatened, or coerced into liquidating her share for any purpose other than her own choosing, the legacy triggers." "What legacy?" Gregory whispered, sweat beading on his forehead. Grandpa smiled, a cold, hard smile. "The entire estate. The trust fund. The controlling shares of the firm. And the deed to the Lakeshore Drive mansion you are currently living in. All of it bypasses the family immediately." Catherine let out a shriek. "What?" "It will be donated in full to the Chicago School of Architecture Scholarship Fund," Grandpa said. "Effective immediately. You will have 30 days to vacate the property. The firm will be dissolved and sold for parts." The screen went black. The silence that followed was absolute. It was the silence of a building collapsing in slow motion, the moment after the supports snap but before the dust rises. Catherine was the first to break. "He can't do that," she whispered, her voice climbing into hysteria. "He can't kick us out of our own house. We live there." "He owned the house, Catherine," Elias said, closing a folder on the table. "You were living there by the grace of the trust. And you just violated the terms of that grace." Gregory was staring at the blank screen, his mouth opening and closing. I didn't know. We didn't sign anything. Taylor didn't sign anything." "That's the beauty of it," I said. My pulse remained steady, a metronome ticking in the silence. I just sat there, watching them unravel. The clause wasn't triggered by my signature, Dad. It was triggered by the demand. By the coercion. Grandpa needed proof that you would try to bleed me dry. And you gave him that proof at dinner on Tuesday. And in the emails you sent. And the voicemails. I pointed to Elias. "We have it all. The threats. The blackmail. The attempt to freeze my access. You pulled the trigger yourselves." Olivia stood up, knocking her chair over. "So we have nothing," she screamed. "I have $2 million in debt. If I don't pay it, they'll seize my assets." "You don't have any assets, Olivia," I said calmly. "Mom and Dad have assets. Or they did, until 5 minutes ago. You did this." Gregory lunged across the table, his face purple. "You planned this. You let us walk into a trap." "This wasn't a plan," I said. "It was structural inevitability. I just didn't stop you. I let you be exactly who you are." It was the ultimate power flip. They had come here to strip me of everything, and instead, they had evicted themselves. They hadn't just lost the $28 million, they had lost the roof over their heads. They had lost the firm. They had lost the prestige they valued more than their own children. "Fix it," Catherine begged, grabbing my hand across the table. Her nails dug into my skin. "Taylor, please. You can stop this. You can tell Elias it was a misunderstanding. We're your family. You can't let us be homeless." I looked at her manicured hands clutching mine. I remembered her watching my contract burn. I remembered her telling me I was lucky to be useful. "I can't fix it, Mom," I said, pulling my hand away. "The clause is automatic. It's structural. Once the foundation cracks, the house falls." I stood up. Elias handed me a folder, my personal documents, the clean title to my freedom. You burned my contract, I told Gregory, who was now slumped in his chair, head in his hands. You tried to burn my escape. So I let you burn the safety net instead. I turned to leave. Where are you going? Olivia cried out. What are we supposed to do? I don't know, I said. But you're creative and spirited. I'm sure you'll figure it out. I walked out of the conference room. I walked through the lobby. I walked out into the Chicago morning. The air was crisp and cold, smelling of the lake. I took a deep breath. For the first time in 25 years, I wasn't holding up the ceiling. I wasn't bracing the walls. I had let it fall, and I was still standing. The fallout was swift and brutal. Within a month, the for sale sign was up on the Lake Shore Drive mansion. The proceeds went entirely to the scholarship fund. My parents moved into a 2-bedroom condo in the suburbs, a humiliating downsize for people who measured their worth in square footage. Gregory tried to sue the estate, but Grandpa's will was ironclad. He spent the last of his savings on legal fees and lost. Olivia declared bankruptcy. Her brand dissolved. Last I heard, she was working as a receptionist at a friend's gallery, actually having to clock in for the first time in her life. As for me, I didn't stay to watch the rubble settle. 6 months later, I was standing on a balcony in London. The skyline here was different, older, messier, but beautiful. Below me, the city hummed with life. Behind me, in the small, sunlit studio I had rented, my team was working. I hadn't joined the big firm I had interviewed with. With the inheritance gone, I didn't have a cushion, but I had something better, I had my reputation. I had started my own boutique firm, Sterling and Stone. We focused on restoration, taking old, damaged structures and reinforcing them, making them strong again without hiding their scars. I realized something standing on that balcony. For years, I thought revenge meant destroying the people who hurt you. I thought it meant burning their world down the way they burned mine. But that wasn't true. Destruction is easy. Any fool with a lighter can burn a contract or a bridge. But creation? Building something that lasts? That is the hardest thing in the world. My revenge wasn't that they lost their house. It was that I built my own. I sipped my tea, Earl Grey, hot, and watched a crane moving in the distance. The narcissist consumes, the survivor builds. They had spent their lives trying to consume me, to use me up until there was nothing left. But I had refused to be fuel. And now, while they were scrambling in the wreckage of their own greed, I was here, laying the foundation for a life that nobody could take away from me. I picked up my phone. No missed calls. No frantic texts. I had changed my number the day I left Chicago. The silence wasn't empty anymore, it was peaceful. It was the silence of a structure that was finally, perfectly sound. Strength isn't always loud. It isn't always screaming or fighting back. Sometimes, strength is the quietest person in the room holding the match, waiting for the right moment to drop it. Sometimes, it's realizing that you don't have to set yourself on fire to keep other people warm. I walked away from the only family I ever knew, and I have never been richer. Not in money, though the business is doing well, but in peace. Have you ever had to be the quiet one while everything burned? Have you ever had to choose between your family and your sanity? Tell me your story in the comments below. I read every single one. And if you're ready to stop fixing broken people and start building your own life, hit that subscribe button. We're building something new here, together.